In this video, we will show you how to replace your fuel pump module on this Dodge Dakota. This will be located inside of your fuel tank. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing I want to mention is it's a good idea to make sure that you're in an area that you can get underneath the vehicle because you will have to lower the fuel tank. Aside from that, you're going to make your way underneath the hood. Along the driver's side, you'll be able to find the fuse box. We'll lift up the cover and remove that. The next thing you want to do is look for the area where it says you have a fuel pump fuse. This tells you exactly where to locate it on the legend right here. It's fuse number 18, a 20 amp fuse. We'll find that in the fuse area right here. To easily find this, you're going to find the 20 amp fuse that's off-centered here, and then make your way down to the fourth fuse, this yellow 20 amp fuse right here. Remove that with some long nose pliers. Give that a quick inspection to make sure it is still reusable, and set that aside for now. Now the next thing that we'll do is attempt to start the vehicle. Typically what you'll find is that it'll crank and not start. Otherwise it may actually start but then die out. At this point, we've removed the pressure from inside the fuel system, and we can continue. Now we can make our way underneath the driver's side of the vehicle. You're going to be looking for where the filler neck leads to the fill tube. On this, we'll have a 7mm headed clamp. Loosen that clamp, remove the hose from the filler neck. Continue with an angled pick to get in between this area. Give your hose a quick squeeze, make sure it's soft and pliable and it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Set that aside. Now we can continue on to the next line above it. For this, we'll use some long nose pliers. I'm going to give this a little twist. Now where my index finger is, there's a squeeze tab. Go ahead and press this in with your long nose pliers, twist this, and pull it off of the filler neck. We'll give that a quick inspection as well. The next thing that we'll do is make our way up and over the frame. We're going to feel up along the top of the fuel tank here. Once you find your vapor canister, you're going to find you have an electrical connector. Squeeze the tab and pull that off there. Once you have it removed, give it a quick check for corrosion and then set that wiring aside. Now we can move along the front of the fuel tank. We're going to move right along to this line. For this, you would want to squeeze these two blue tabs in towards each other and then separate the line. Now we'll continue on to this area. For this, generally you can grab onto it, give it a little twist to break it free, and pull it right off of the frame. If it does not come off, we'll continue on with a flat blade screwdriver and gently pry it off, making sure that we do not damage this in any way. Give that a quick squeeze, make sure it's soft and pliable and not torn, worn, or damaged. The next thing you'll want to do is have a support underneath the fuel tank because we're going to be removing the fuel tank straps. We'll use a 16mm to remove each of the mounting nuts holding the straps in place. Now that we have this down, we'll pause on this strap and remove the mounting hardware from the rear strap as well. Let's continue on to lowering the fuel tank, just enough that we can push it towards the drive shaft and remove each of our fuel tank straps. Now we can remove this one. Now we can start lowering that fuel tank just enough that we can reach up along the top. Once you have it low enough, we can continue on to disconnecting the electrical connector up along the top here. Now on this, you'll find that you have a red locking tab. Use a flat blade screwdriver to press that locking tab away from the connector. You don't need to fully remove it, just unlock it. Now we can continue on to the squeeze tab on this. It's common for this to be stuck with dirt or debris. I'll use some pliers, give this a little squeeze, and remove the electrical connector from the fuel module. A quick check for corrosion, and then set that aside. Now we can move along to this line. For it, you'll find that you have two tabs to squeeze together. After that, you can disconnect it. As we disconnect this, keep in mind there could be fuel still inside this line. As we disconnect this, keep in mind there could be fuel still inside this line. At this point, it might be a little bit easier to work on this by getting the tank out from underneath the vehicle. Now, before we continue pulling this out of here, it's important to make sure you clean any of the debris up along this area of the tank. You don't want anything falling inside of the fuel system. Now we'll continue on with a brass punch and a rubber mallet. We're going to have to remove the locking ring that holds the fuel module into the fuel tank. To do this, we'll come along one of these edges here with our brass punch, give it a couple bonks to start breaking it free. As we do that, we'll continue on going around the tank so we can do it as evenly as possible. Take hold of that locking ring, remove it from the area. Now we can remove the fuel pump module. You'll notice inside this lower area it holds a lot of fuel. Go ahead and try to tilt this sideways to remove as much of it as possible into the fuel tank. There it is, friends. Before you dispose of your original module, we'll continue on to removing this clip. To do this, I'll use a small pocket screwdriver. Get underneath each of the ears and gently start pulling it away. Once I have the first one off of there, I'll rotate it and do the same to the other. Give this a quick inspection, make sure it's still reusable, wipe it down, set it aside. With that out of the way, it's time to start preparing the tank. Now you can see that we still have our original gasket on here. You are going to be removing that, but before we do, it's a good idea to try to get as much of the debris away from this area as possible. By leaving the gasket in there while you do this, it creates a little ridge to help prevent any debris from making its way into the fuel tank. Remove your gasket, set that aside. Let's make our way underneath the vehicle and reinstall the clip that we had removed from that fuel module. Slide it right into the hose here. Now we'll continue on to the float. Looking at the module, you can see exactly where it needs to go. We'll take this, slide it in, and press it till it clicks. Once you've heard that click, give it a tug. We're trying to remove it. You want to make sure this does not fall off while it's in your fuel tank. Continue on with your new gasket. We'll slide it into place. Time to install that module. We'll put the float down and in first, and then bring this down into place, making sure that we have this area facing towards where the center of the vehicle would be. Let's clean up our locking ring and give it a quick inspection. You want to make sure that it's not rotted, weak, or damaged in any way. If it is, you need to replace it. Now, as we press this down into place, you're going to want to make sure that you have your locking ring in hand. Align the locking ring with the locking tabs that are on the tank. Once you have that in place, continue on by turning it clockwise to lock it in position. The next thing we'll do is get the tank back in place. To do that, we'll start by raising it up and connecting our wiring and our fuel tube. Make sure you press in the connector as far as you can, make sure it's secure, and lock it in with the red locking tab. Reconnect the fuel line. Now, as we continue bringing this up the rest of the way, let's pay attention to our fuel filler hose and the evap line. We'll make sure that we bring this up and put those up and over the frame. Continue bringing up the fuel tank, making sure that it aligns with the points of the frame where it needs to go. Now, before you continue pushing this all the way up against the frame of the vehicle, continue on with your two straps. We're going to need to put them back into their positioning on the frame. We'll continue on with the forward strap, which is the smaller of the two. Put it right up into the slot on the frame up in here. Once you have it up in there, we'll give it a little twist to put it in its locked position. Now, before we push this all the way up to the frame to hold the gas tank in place, let's continue and do the same thing to the rear strap. We'll get that rear strap in place, slide it into the lock position in the frame. Now we can continue raising the fuel tank all the way up and starting in the mounting hardware for our fuel tank straps. Make sure that's nice and tight. Do the same to the rear strap. Once you're sure the fuel tank is secured to the frame of the vehicle, remove the support. Continue on up along the front here. Press that in. Listen for a click. Make sure it's completely secured. Let's connect this back on. Make your way to the filler neck. Press this together, listen for a click. Continue on to the filler hose. Once you have that in the proper position, continue on with the 7mm headed clamp. You want to make sure this is secure so you don't have to worry about fuel coming out of this area when you fill up your tank. Reinstall your 20-amp fuse in the proper place. Put on your fuse box cover. Okay friends, we've got the truck back together. At this point, hop in the passenger compartment and start the vehicle. You might notice it takes a couple extra cranks because it has to pump fuel all the way up to the engine. Once the vehicle is running, make sure you check for fuel leaks. Aside from that, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.